All right. Happy New Year to everyone. Welcome back to the Financially Intentional Podcast. I'm super juiced to be joined by Mr. Stanley Tate, student loan expert, our student loan expert. And first of all, what's up, Stanley?
Yo, chilling. What's good with you? How you doing?
I'm doing great. I should say Stanley Tate Esquire and put some respect on his name.
I work for it, but I don't hold it out like that. I see people that do. It's kind of crazy.
I see it all the time.
Yeah, I never lead or follow up with that joint. People do it for me because it always felt like hella weird. Mostly because I was in if you're out and about gathering and whatnot, people like to lead with their accomplishments instead of their value as a human being. And so I'd rather start there and let everything else fill in the blanks. That ain't my job.
I heard that, and that is super important. Yes, people do like to lead with their titles, which is neither here nor there. But I do want to put respect on your name because I just need people to understand who they're listening to. But anyway, can you give us a little bit of background on what you do in the student loan space?
Yeah, so by trade, I'm a lawyer, right? But I happen to be someone that focuses specifically on student loans and student loan debt for borrowers. You don't need a lawyer, is what I tell people, but you need someone that really understands these complex things. So although I'm a lawyer, think of me more as like a student loan coach, student loan advisor, someone that is by your side to say, okay, do this, do that, don't do any of that, and to put you in the best position possible. So you can go out and live your dreams and do everything you're trying to accomplish, even if you owe 100, 200, 300, or even a million, like some of my clients do, like whatever, we can get it done. That ain't no big deal.
Yeah, I love it. I like that you said you're a coach. It makes it less intimidating when people are thinking about working with you.
Yeah, it is. One, it's a scary thing anyway. It's like dealing with student loans, and like, oh man, do I really need a lawyer? And I'm like, nah, you don't need a lawyer. You need someone that knows what the hell they're doing. The added advantage of having this law degree thing behind me is I got this whole ass license that I worked hard as hell to get, that I have no desire to lose. And so I put that on the line every time I say I'm going to do something for someone. I have to follow through on that, or else I put my license in jeopardy. And I like nice shit, so I want to make sure I don't put that in jeopardy so I can continue to acquire nice shit.
We know you like nice stuff. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. But I really wanted to talk about like the current state of student loans because this is a very interesting time in student loan history. We are now going into year 3 of loan deferment, these loan forgiveness battles, all this kind of stuff that's going on. And a lot of people are just in limbo because again, this is undocumented, unprecedented, like things that are happening. So just kind of want to bring everybody up to speed on what's going on now in 2023.
Yeah, so huge reset of everything, right? For most people with federal student loans, right, which is the vast majority of people have federal student loans. I should say the vast majority of people who have student loan debt have federal student loans. Most of them, they've had their loans on pause for the last 2+ years. There have been some people who've had to keep paying on their loans throughout the pandemic, and they're either going to have federal loans that are made under an older loan program that don't get the same benefits. These are people who went to school before 2012 for the most part. And then you have people who have private student loans, and they also didn't qualify for the pause. Now, that's the big confusion here is like, just kind of get that in your mind. If your loan's been in pause, everything I'm about to say to you later on, for the most part, you're going to benefit from. But if you've had to keep paying on your loans throughout the pandemic, then you may need to do something to qualify for some of these relief programs we're going to talk about, because you don't automatically qualify, or you may not qualify at all for private student loans. All right, so that's the framework. We got 3 loans. We got the ones with the government, we got the ones that's kind of like the government, but not really with them, and then we got these private student loans. We ain't going to talk shit about private student loans right now. Let's just focus on these 2 groups. All right, so forgiveness. Big one. Biden says I'm going to wipe out $10,000 for people, 20,000 get Pell Grant. Cool. Said it before midterms. Boom. It gets challenged. Now it's on hold. Supreme Court has it. They are doing hearings later in February. We'll get a decision sometime this summer is probably what we're looking at. One way or the other, you're either going to get it or you ain't. I don't know what's going to happen. Legal experts say we're probably not going to get it, just looking at the composition of the court. That said, if you don't get that forgiveness, for many people, it's not going to make a fundamental difference. For a lot of people who owe 10,000, that's what they need. They're going to be crushed. They're going to be like, "Oh, I could have been done." I don't know what to tell you there. But during that time, while we're waiting to find out what's going on with that forgiveness program, the Department of Education, the president, he extended the pause on payments until at least this summer, really. So we're going to continue with another 6 months or so, no payments, no interest on department-owned loans, right? Cool. That's a huge win because during the time you're not making payments, you're also continuing to get credit towards two other forgiveness programs. There's public service loan forgiveness and there's income driven repayment forgiveness. Now, public service loan forgiveness, everyone's like familiar with that for the most part, which is you work for the government or a nonprofit, your loans get wiped out after 10 years when you make payments. They've done a lot of changes over there. People have gotten a lot of forgiveness under that program. But the more interesting one is this income-driven repayment forgiveness, and what we refer to as IDR forgiveness. This is where the government writes off your loans after 20 to 25 years of paying on your debt. Now, for many of you who've had debt for 20 plus years, you're like, "Oh, they need to wipe mine out." It's probably going to happen under this program, but we have to wait on this review that they're doing to take place. Now, what is this review? Basically, many of you who went to school back in 2000-ish or before, these repayment options didn't exist where they would forgive your loans after a certain number of years. The government instituted them years later. Many of you enrolled in them, some of you didn't. The government's saying, "You know what? Look, we messed up, our fault. We're going to give everyone credit towards this repayment plan forgiveness, even if they were never enrolled in this plan at all. We're going to give you credit towards it, and we're going to count your payments you've made. We're going to count the time spent in forbearance. We're going to count the time spent in deferments, and we're going to count all those up. And if they hit 240 or more payments, your loans are at the stage to be wiped out potentially. And 240 payments, that's 20 years. If you only borrow loans for undergraduate education, if you borrow loans for grad school, even if it was just one loan, you're looking at 25 years or 300 monthly payments. So you're going to get credit for every payment you made, no matter what plan you were in. You're going to get credit for your time spent in forbearance, and you'll get some credit for time spent in deferment. They're going to finish all of this review stuff by the end of the summer, supposedly. That's going to have some people right there on the cusp of getting their loans forgiven, or it's going to have some people that are already going to get their loans forgiven on this program. And it's just one of these huge things that we haven't been talking about because everybody's been caught up in Biden's cancellation. Oh my God, this, oh my God, that. But this larger opportunity is waiting out there.
So by the end of the summer, it sounds like a lot of people are going to have their loans forgiven. So we're going to see a lot of people saying, okay, finally it's done without having this Biden loan forgiveness program.
Yeah, exactly, because it has nothing. Yeah, it has nothing to do with it. Biden's cancellation is one thing over here. That's small potatoes for a lot of people. Like, yeah, great. You went to like cosmetology school or whatever, you owe 10,000, your loans are going to be written off if that ever gets passed. But for the people who've been battling debt for 2 decades plus, this IDR forgiveness is the much bigger opportunity that has the capacity to wipe out your entire student loan balance or push you much closer to getting your loans forgiven under that program than you previously were. Because again, you're getting retroactive credit even if you were never in one of those income-driven repayment plans.
But the key is that people have to wait until the end of the summer because all these loans are under review right now.
Yeah, because the department, the president and the Department of Education, they announced a bunch of stuff over the past year. It ain't like they increased their team to make all these things happen. So like they announced them and cool, but they still have to implement them. And there's 43 million borrowers they have to deal with. So like order of priority has been public service loan forgiveness. Let's get those wiped out. Then it was, okay, while we're working on those, let's get this 10 to 20,000 because if we can get those people off our books that we know are going to be completely wiped out, that frees up even more before we get to this last review, which is going to be the one that's really transformative. But the problem is that lawsuit happened. Now that cancellation on hold. So the government said, okay, cool. Let's finish up the public service loan forgiveness stuff first. Then we'll start working on the review for everyone else. And it's going to take us to probably this summer before we get finished, because we're talking, again, 43 million people that they're looking at accounts for. So I think we just need to chill out. And for many of you, what's the harm, yo? It's like another 6 more months of waiting. You've been waiting 3.5 years, and you're getting something you otherwise wouldn't have gotten but for the pandemic.
So, like, I know that I have seen people under public service loan forgiveness actually, like, they're emailing me like, we've gotten forgiven. Like, my friend got 100 something plus in loans forgiven already. So, are you starting to see more and more of that too? Like, when did public service loan forgiveness first start? Isn't this kind of like when most people are starting to qualify, like these last couple of years?
So the public service loan forgiveness program started October 1st, 2007. So the first people that would have been eligible for forgiveness would have been October 2017. But the problem was the rules were really like strict. You had to have the right type of loan, be in the right repayment plan, pay on time, yada, yada, yada. There was a problem with the student loan services where people were getting bad information. And there were some people who just assumed, hey, look, I work for the government or nonprofit, I'm get my loans wiped out. So there were a bunch of people who didn't get their loans forgiven. Very few people actually got their loans forgiven until the government changed the rules during the pandemic to say, you know what, no matter what type of loan you have, no matter what payment you were in, we're going to give you credit towards public service loan forgiveness. Now, that waiver opportunity ended on Halloween, but they're still processing that paperwork. And there have been thousands of people have been getting their loans forgiven. I just had a bunch of my clients, they got their debt wiped out over Christmas, right before the new year. Kind of the department does it in stages. They have what's called a direct to discharge list. And so they, like every week or so, there's like a new batch of people that are coming along. And I think the tally today is like $36 billion of student loan debt has been forgiven under that program. And much of that has just been in the last 6 months. And so for those of you who have applied for it, it's coming. It just takes time. I've had some clients get it done in 4 months. I've had some clients get it done in a year. And it really comes down to the paperwork you've generated over time. Like if you had already been applying for it and they have record of your employment, it's going to be a little bit faster for you. If you ain't find out about it until right before the deadline, and that's the first time you turned in everything, it's going to be a little bit slower for you. I'm seeing a timeline of about 4 to 6 months on average for the vast majority of my clients.
Oh, I think that's the perfect holiday gift for a lot of people. I wish I had that gift. I personally just paid off my loans. So I feel like that was one of my biggest money mistakes. I was on public service loan forgiveness and I was just like, I'm tired of messing with these people. So I just paid it off. But if I would have just waited, I could have gotten it forgiven.
I think that's the hard part though, is separating out the emotional kind of decision making that goes into it. Because like, how do you put a price on wellness, right? Yeah, you put a price on it, you paid off your student loans, but the fact that you ain't been thinking about them and it's taking up space in your mind, for many people, it's like, you know what? It's worth it. I could have done that. And other people, they're like, you know what? They're going to forgive these loans. All I got to do is follow these rules. They learn to look at it like it's monopoly money. It's not real. I'll just wait. And there's no right or wrong answer. There's the financially, like, here are the numbers, but how do you weigh out the emotional component of how it makes you feel? And that's where it gets tricky. You have to do what's in your best interest. So for you, you did what's best for you. You could have waited, but think about like how much better you may feel over these last several years where you didn't have the debt.
I know I definitely do not miss dealing with those loan servicers, and that alone gave me so much peace of mind. Do you have like general rules for people to pay off their student loans? I've heard if your student loans are less than 1 year of your annual salary, then like less than your annual salary, you should just go ahead and just aggressively attack them. And then if you are like looking at loans like in the 6 figures, you should try to seek out somebody to help you with your loans.
Yeah, my general framework, and again, just generally, because like everything kind of matters, is that if you owe more than like 1.25, like it's a 1.25 to 1 ratio of what you owe versus what you bring in a year. So if you bring in 100,000 a year, you owe $125,000. You kind of have to weigh out, is it better for me to pay as little as possible and get my loans forgiven in the long run, or do I try to aggressively pay this off? And that's like the general starting point I go into it, because many of us who graduated like in the mid 2000s, whatever, you didn't really start getting into your real bread until maybe the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. We talking a whole decade plus after you left school. And during that time, you had to prioritize savings and all these other things. And so you may be halfway on your way towards repayment plan forgiveness, and it makes no sense for you to attack your debt, even if you have a 1-to-1 ratio, because you're about to get loans wiped out in another 10 years possibly. Just pay it, find out, okay, how much will I pay over the next decade? Can I tolerate those payments? And can I put that money towards other things? And coming to it, that framework is just, okay, what's in your best interest at this stage, and understanding that your plan may shift over time as your resources change. And student loans, thankfully, federal student loans, I should say, they're the most flexible debt you have when you think about it. Your mortgage, they don't let you change your payment up. It is what it is, right? You may be able to refinance. You may be able to postpone 1 or 2 payments. They're not going to let you put it on hold for a whole year. And if your finances fall apart, they don't care. They want their money. Same thing with a car loan. Federal student loans, on the other hand, they allow you, as your financial situation changes up or down, you can adjust a payment to fit your needs. The cost of that is you may end up with a lot more interest than you originally borrowed, because you prioritized other things in your life at that time. No judgment one way or the other, because we got to make it. I ain't have no home to, like, I couldn't go back and stay with my parents after I graduated college and concentrate on paying down debt, which is what, like, these Business Insider stories. They'd be like, oh, this person paid off $200,000 in 4 years. You look into it, their kind of resources were unparalleled to anyone else. So, like, for the vast majority of people, they're like, yo, I graduated, I had to find a crib, I had to get furniture, I had to get a car. And we ain't talking about, like, when you take that one vacation to the Dominican Republic on your Groupon, and now you end up trying to upgrade because that bed was trash. Like, we're not even talking about all these other luxurious expenses you kind of layer in because you feel like you need to reward yourself for the work you've done. So what's the general framework? If you owe more than what you borrowed, we need to look into forgiveness. However, if you've been in repayment for several years, we may still want to hold off on paying it back and see where you stand with this forgiveness. Now, private student loans, you're struggling with those, that's a whole other conversation.
And I was going to ask you about that too, because a lot of times people are like, should I just go ahead and consolidate, refinance my loans into a private student loan because the interest rates are lower? But when you refinance into a private student loan, what are some things that you're giving up?
Yeah, so if you have a federal loan that you're refinancing with a private lender, you're going to lose these income-driven repayment options. So if your income changes due to job loss, sickness, whatever, your private lender is not going to be as flexible working with you. Whereas with the government, say, okay, cool, you're unemployed, your payment is going to be zero, you're protected. Your private lender, they may offer you a forbearance or interest-only payments, but they're only going to do it for a short period of time. You may get 6 months at a time, maybe a year at most. At some point, that bill is going to come due, and they're going to say, you need to pay us X amount of dollars per month, and ain't nothing we can do about you. I can't afford it. And it just is what it is. And now your credit's going to take a hit and things like that, because that's just the nature of it. So you're going to lose this access to repayment plans that are flexible. You're also going to lose this access to forgiveness. So if you work for the government or you work at a hospital that's qualified for public service, you have to ask yourself, does it make more sense to keep with the government and just keep with the federal government for your student loans and just ride that out until it gets forgiven? Or do I really care about the interest? And that's such a huge thing, because, like, we're applying the rules we use for our mortgage, our car notes, and our credit cards to student loans, as far as, oh, I should pay off the ones with the highest amount of debt, the interest rate, whatever. I get it, but I think you need to look at your student loans a lot different and be more critical about, okay, with federal loans, how close am I on getting my loans forgiven? If I refinance with a private lender, am I confident that I will have job security that will allow me to aggressively pay off under these terms, understanding they're going to be unwilling to work with me as the federal government does.
I think that's great advice. Lastly, I want to ask, like, why or when should somebody seek out help when addressing their student loan?
I think let's break it down in groups. If you're someone who has student loans and you are just trying to figure out how to navigate your life moving forward, think about it as part of your overall financial planning. I think it makes sense to sit down with a professional and kind of walk through it. You can say, oh, you can get free advice from the student loan service and everything like that. These are the same people where the government's trying to correct the things that they messed up on. And to be fair, they know some things, but a lot of times you're getting a rep who is not as well versed in the rules and understanding of how these things work, not just with student loans, but also how your other stuff works financially in your life. And so it makes sense if you are someone who has significant amount of debt that is looking to get their holistic finances in order to talk with a professional. It's worth it to save you whatever. Now, you can work with me, you can work with whoever. Just get someone that you trust from that standpoint. The second group of people are those who are entertaining going back to school, or your parents, that you are a parent that's borrowing loans for your child, or your child may be borrowing loans. It's helpful to have this conversation on the back end with someone to talk through real life scenarios. Because still to this day, we get plenty of people that are like, yo, I just signed what they put in front of me, as if like we don't have 2 decades of experience knowing, ooh, this is not the thing to do. And so I see a lot of parents who are digging themselves into financial holes, taking out loans for their child, expecting their child to contribute on these loans. And then it don't work out like that, because it never works out like that. There's always a period where someone is trying to find themselves in this world and they ain't got the finances to pay these loans because they're trying to figure shit out. And you don't want to be that person that can't retire or feel like you can't retire because you owe way more in student debt. I got plenty of parents that owe $300,000, $400,000 for their child's loans on top of the $100,000 they owe for their loans. And you'd be like, that's crazy. But it's also like, this is our system and how it works. And I think there are a lot of benefits to the system. There are a lot of negatives about it. But if we are operated with smartly, we can put ourselves in the best position possible to be able to do all those things. Take out the student loans, travel, buy a house, save for retirement. You can do all those things, but it does take strategy.
So if someone wants to work directly with you, how can they get in contact with you?
Man, that's easy. Just go to tateesq.com, TATEESQ.com, schedule a call on the website. We'll go ahead and get the general information through. And then if I feel like it makes sense to have a further conversation and put you in the best position, develop a strategy, I'll walk you through that process as well.
Sorry, I was on your website, navigating back and forth. Anyway.
Hey, man, we put some work into that website. That website looked dope. So
I love it. I feel like everything you do is like top tier. So, I can't complain.
Thank you.
Like, I will never complain. Yes.
It's one of those things being like a Black business person in this particular field. It is just me for the most part. Yeah, there's a couple other people that say they do it, but not on this level. And I try to make sure that we put out something that says this person cares about what they're doing.
Yeah, I can tell. It looks lovely. So make sure you guys just check out Stanley's website, Tate, ESQ. If you want to work with him, if you think he's a good fit, if that's what you need. I just think that it's irresponsible right now, especially if you don't have a plan around your student loan debt, to not have a plan around your student loan debt, because like you said, I feel like a lot of people use this debt to hold them back in life unnecessarily. But if you can create a plan, I feel like it frees you up to live the life that you really want to live and really deserve to live. But that's like in general, like personal finances in general. Like creating a plan really frees you up to live your life by intention.
I 100% agree with that, especially because I see so many people, they hold on to old rules in their brain, old thinking, even though new information is coming out that could actually benefit them, and they're doing themselves a disservice. I guess some people are like, oh, I can't get forgiveness. I can't get a lower payment. I'm just going to struggle paying this. And I look at them like, yo, I could save you $15,000 a year if you just do this, and your loans are going to be forgiven. And they have so much mistrust. They have so much hurt. And there really is like student loan PTSD, if we're being real about it, because of those bad interactions with the servicers, the bills they're getting. And I just tell people, yo, if you just listen, I got it. I had this call last week with this woman in Ohio. When I say she couldn't hear me until I cussed her out, I was like, yo, would you just shut up for a second? I promise. And that snapped in her brain. And then she was like, okay. And I hate doing that, but sometimes you have to pierce through what's that old information so they can actually hear you and put themselves in the best position possible to win. Because I promise you, I got people that owe over $500,000 in student loan debt that make $60,000 a year, and they still went out and bought a house. They still are able to live every day. And know what I tell them? Learn to ignore the balance, concentrate on the process. We will get the debt forgiven. We just need to follow the process.
Wow, I love that. And I want to like really emphasize the fact that you're talking about, you're saving people thousands and thousands of dollars in their student loan debt. But I also want to emphasize the fact that student loan debt, just like any other debt, is super unique to who you are. So personal finance is personal. And I think that a lot of times people want to listen to these TikTok experts and these people that generalize things about student loans. And it's specific depending on like how you file your taxes, what state you live in, where you work. So I think like it's worthwhile to get in front of someone who actually knows this information, knows the up-to-date information, because it's always changing. So I always recommend somebody work with someone, unless you only got a couple $1,000s student loans and you just need to attack that and stop playing games.
I promise you, I get calls like that. People call me about $2,000, and I'm like, "How much you make a year?" They'd be like $100,000. I'm like, if you don't shut the hell up talking to me and just pay that off. But those people are the ones that, in my experience, that are actively looking at ways to find the best deal for themselves. And I appreciate that mindset, because they're not just putting their head in the sand. They're saying, no, I want to do this, but I want to do it in the smartest way possible. And I appreciate it. But also, it's a very easy phone call. Girl, if you don't just pay off that $2,000 and stop talking to me.
But then I do understand the trauma of student loans, especially if you have $500,000 in student loans and you just being so overwhelmed by it that you just don't know what to do.
Totally.
All right, so you guys know what to do. Make sure you reach out to Stanley. Make sure you go to his website, Tate Esquire, Tate ESQ, if you want to seek his help. But he is our student loan expert here on the Financially Intentional podcast. And Stanley, thank you so much for your time. So many gems dropped. So I hope that people get value, and we'll see you back soon.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate you.